Militant ISIS fighters. They are less than 40 miles away from the capital of Baghdad. They're moving closer and closer. They're also battling for control of Baquba. That's 37 miles to the north. They've looted the police station there. The government insists the insurgents are not in control of the town. Let's get some serious analysis. I'm joined by Joby Warrick of the Washington Post, Tara Maller of the New America Foundation, and CNN's chief national security correspondent, Jim Sciutto. Jim, is it really possible, I asked the former U.S. ambassador to Baghdad, is it really possible these guys could take Baghdad?
It's not very likely for a few reasons. One, it's the capital, big concentration of Iraqi forces there. They want to defend it. Two, you've had a call to arms for Shiites from Shiite clerics who are coming in. There's even a run on Iraqi military uniforms you hear because people want to volunteer for the fight to defend themselves against Sunnis. But three, also because Baghdad is very much a Shia city. The Sunni population down to 15-some-odd% after clashes going back to 2008. And the ISIS has advantages in the areas where it is a Sunni majority population, and that's been the case so far in the northern part of the country. It's very different when you get to Baghdad.
How serious is this fear, Tara, and you understand Iraq very well, that the civil war that we've seen over the past 3 years in Syria, where more than 150,000 people have been killed, maybe millions have been made homeless, refugees, 3 million outside the country, 4 million internally, a similar situation could develop in Iraq?
Well, I don't know that we'd see it get as bad as we've seen it get in Syria over the past year or so. However, there is a lot of reason to be concerned. You saw in Syria groups taking large swaths of territory where they're getting financial gain through oil fields, they're getting population gain through recruiting fighters, and they're getting weaponry. And you do have the potential for that to develop in parts of Iraq where its insurgents have taken over. But I agree with Jim that I don't think that's likely for Baghdad, mostly because of the demographic breakdown, the ISF, and the size of the city itself. Almost 9 million people. Mosul's only around 2 million.
Joby, you've been doing some great reporting in the Washington Post. How good is U.S. intelligence right now? What's going on inside Iraq?
Well, the key question we'd like to know right now is how closely are the tribal people, the Sunnis, that are really the key group in this case, how much are they supporting these ISIS folks? If you remember back in the middle of the last decade, ISIS or its predecessors had trouble with the Sunnis, turned away from it, saw the Anbar awakening and sort of split with ISIS. But now it's just the other way. The Sunnis are they're supporting ISIS, and they're helping them actually move forward and take over cities. So a question that I think intelligence wants to know is how good are these ties and how much support are they actually giving ISIS? And
the fact that Nouri al-Maliki's government is now accusing Saudi Arabia of basically fomenting this kind of terror attack on Baghdad and other cities in Iraq, what do you make of that?
That's kind of a loose charge. I think all along some of the folks have been, on the Shiite side have been saying that the Gulf Arabs have been sending money and weapons and support. I think early on they did support some of the radical groups. They've curtailed that, particularly the Saudis. They're trying to really control what goes into the groups in Syria. I think it's a bit of a loaded charge at the moment.
Jim, there's a lot of concern. A lot of Americans worry about getting dragged in once again into Iraq, given the experience that started back in 2003. This president really doesn't want that to happen.
No, and he's made that clear, one, by saying he's not going to put boots on the ground, but two, I think you can say based on the pace of the response so far. I mean, this has been several days now where the administration has been considering options, having late-night meetings, looking at the pluses and minuses. They're clearly not in any rush to act, particularly when you're talking about more kinetic things like airstrikes, etc. Clearly they're going to do something, intelligence sharing, this kind of thing. But in terms of, kinetic military action, they have no rush. There were no rush to do.
You agree?
Well, I agree, but I also think that the administration is actually losing time to do whatever it is they're going to do. I don't know that anything that's going to develop in the next 24 to 48 hours should be changing that calculus. If behind the scenes they're putting stronger demands on Maliki, do X and then we'll do Y to help you, maybe we're not seeing that. But we haven't heard the administration come out with specifics as to what they're actually asking Maliki to do and in exchange for what type of action.
Hold on for a moment, guys. I want to continue this conversation right after this quick break.
Humans. Even when we cross our T's and dot our I's, we still run into problems. That's why Liberty Mutual Insurance offers accident forgiveness with our auto policies. If you qualify, your rates won't go up due to your first accident. Because making mistakes is only human. And so are we. We also offer new car replacement. So if you total your new car, we give you the money for a new one. Call Liberty Mutual Insurance at 1-888-620-3122 and ask us all about our auto features, like guaranteed repairs, where if you get into an accident and use one of our certified repair shops, your repairs are guaranteed for life. So call 1-888-620-3122 to talk with an insurance expert about everything that comes standard with our base auto policy. And if you switch, you could save up to $423. Liberty Mutual Insurance. Responsibility. What's your policy?
This is the storm.
There's a storm coming.
That whipped through the turbine, which poured surplus energy into the plant, which generously lowered its price, and tipped off the house, which used all that energy to stay warm through the storm.
There's a bad storm coming.
The Internet of Everything is changing how energy works. Is your network ready?
Once again, we're joined by Joby Warrick of the Washington Post, Tara Maller of the New America Foundation, and our own Jim Sciutto. This whole notion, Joby, of these terrorists in Iraq and Syria, ISIS terrorists, developing, I guess, agents or terrorists who could come not only to Europe, but actually to the United States and plot terror attacks here. How realistic is that?
Well, you know, when Baghdadi, the current leader, was released from prison in 2009, he'd been held by our forces for several years. One of his parting words to the American forces was, "See you in New York."
I believe the exact quote was, "I'll see you guys."
See you guys in New York, exactly. So for the time being, and this goes back from the early days in Iraq, they were very focused on local issues. They'd like to get Assad out of Syria. They've got other plans locally. But eventually, they have broader ambitions, there's no question about it.
And there are a lot of foreigners who are working with them, including Americans, who actually go there and train and potentially could come back.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, both in Syria and Iraq, one of the main concerns from the U.S. perspective is that areas can be used as terrorist safe havens and that groups can use those areas as training grounds to recruit terrorists. I mean, it only takes a few individuals to carry out attacks overseas by a well-funded group.
Which raises the question, if the U.S. is going to launch airstrikes on ISIS targets in Iraq, why not launch airstrikes against ISIS targets also in Syria?
Several officials have made that case. We know there's been disagreement, and some of them former, some of them current. Kerry and others who've been pushing for that kind of action. And I've been told by intelligence officials that it is not just some distant thought from ISIS militants about attacking the U.S., but that there is training, there's aspiration, there's coordination with al-Qaeda core leadership about picking out targets, encouraging them to pick out targets not only in Europe, but also on the U.S. homeland. This is a real concern.
What are you hearing, Joe? Do you think that's going to happen?
Absolutely. If you look at social media,
absolutely what?
There is planning and talking, discussing about some
kind of action. You haven't heard it's going to happen.
Not heard it's going to happen, but you do see constantly on social media discussion about what can we do, what are the targets that would be right for plucking right now, and so they do talk about it.
Joby, Tara, Jim, guys, thanks very much.